The station breathed like a restless beast, voices colliding, footsteps echoing, luggage wheels rattling across the floor. Announcements blurred into static, but she heard none of them. Her eyes were fixed on the glass doors that kept opening, spilling strangers into the cold morning light. A red scarf, frayed at its edges, hung loosely around her neck. Its ends brushed against her coat as if tugged by invisible hands, as if it too was waiting. She held the scarf once with both fists, pressing it against her chest, before letting it fall again. Her suitcase leaned by her ankle, small, worn, far too light for a departure that felt this heavy. She bent down and touched its handle, but her hand trembled, unsure whether to claim it or let it go. Her fingers were pale, knuckles white, nails bitten down until they almost hurt to touch. The doors slid open again. A crowd spilled in. For a second, she thought she saw him, broad shoulders, a familiar tilt of the head, but the figure dissolved into another face, then another. Her breath faltered. She closed her eyes, whispering something only she could hear. "Don't be foolish." A woman nearby laughed loudly into her phone, the sound cracking like glass in her ear. She turned her gaze away, searching for silence in the chaos. The clock above the platform ticked with a cracked rhythm, one hand jerking slightly with each second, as though time itself was broken here. She lifted her chin. Her eyes scanned the station, not for him anymore, but for something unnamed. The scarf slipped from her shoulder, landing across the handle of the suitcase. She didn't pick it up. "Are you waiting for someone?" a voice asked, soft and uncertain. She turned. A boy, no older than 12, stood there, clutching a paper bag. His eyes carried the same question his mouth had spoken. She forced a smile, thin and fragile. "No," she answered. Her voice wavered, betraying her. "Not anymore." The boy lingered a moment longer, then drifted away into the sea of bodies. Her gaze fell to the scarf again. Red against gray, memory against emptiness. She crouched and lifted it, holding it carefully now, as though it could burn her skin or shatter in her hands. The train's horn screamed across the station. People surged forward. She remained still, clutching the scarf, her breath caught between leaving and staying. In that pause, she felt it, the weight of everything unsaid pressing against her ribs. The moment stretched, fragile as glass, waiting for a fracture. And then, without warning, her eyes filled with tears she could not release. The scarf slipped once more from her fingers. The scarf lay folded across her lap now, its red fabric creased like a map she could not read. Her fingers traced the frayed threads, each one tugging loose a memory she hadn't meant to summon. Her father's voice echoed, deep, patient, steady. "When the wind pulls, hold on tighter. Not everything worth keeping comes easy." She had been small then, clutching the same scarf as it dwarfed her shoulders, the fabric smelling of smoke and winter pine. It had been his gift, the last before distance became stronger than presence. She blinked back into the station. Families collided around her, arms thrown wide, laughter spilling into the air. A man lifted his daughter high, her giggle rang like silver bells. A couple kissed without hesitation, bags tumbling unnoticed to the ground. She lowered her gaze. Loneliness pressed heavy on her chest, making even her breath feel borrowed. The small suitcase by her feet leaned toward her, scuffed and dented from too many moves. It wasn't just a bag, it was a record of her running. Each scratch told of nights spent chasing stability she never found, of cheap rooms that smelled of damp wood and quiet tears swallowed before sleep. The handle was smooth now, worn down by hands that had never stopped searching. Her thoughts tripped over the math she'd been doing in her head for weeks, numbers that never added up. Rent overdue, the job she left unfinished, the borrowed money she couldn't repay. The future always felt like a station where her train had already passed. She shifted in her seat, eyes drawn to the crowd. And then there he was, not close enough to hear her breath, not far enough to be unseen. A stranger leaning against the column, coat collar turned up, his gaze steady on her as though he had been waiting for her to notice. She froze. His silence was sharp, deliberate. He didn't look away when their eyes met. He simply remained, as if his presence alone was a question she could not answer. The scarf slipped slightly from her lap. She caught it with one hand, holding it tightly now, almost defiantly, as though to remind herself it was hers. Her anchor, her wound, her inheritance of memory. The announcement board flickered. Delayed. Platform change. The crowd groaned, but she barely heard. Her pulse quickened. She thought of walking away, of leaving the suitcase behind and stepping into the blur of bodies. She thought of vanishing before anyone could claim her or her silence. But her eyes returned to him. He had not moved. His lips curved, not into a smile, not into a frown, but something between. Confusion, maybe. Recognition, perhaps. Her hand tightened on the scarf. Her body leaned forward, then stopped. And in that fragile hesitation, the air between them thickened, charged with a goodbye that had not yet been spoken. The delay stretched the station into a kind of purgatory, people pacing, sighing, checking their watches as though time owed them something. The girl remained seated, though her body hummed with restlessness. The scarf was clutched in her lap like a shield, the suitcase pressed against her leg as if it might anchor her to the floor. When she looked again, the stranger was closer. He had left the column and taken a seat a few rows away, angled just enough that she could see him without staring. His coat was worn at the elbows, the leather cracked, softened by years. His shoes told the same story, creased, dulled, soles uneven. A man who had walked too far without ever arriving. Her gaze trailed lower, catching on the edge of something slipping from his pocket. A photograph, bent at the corners, yellowed from touch. For a heartbeat, it glinted in the light, a boy's face beside a woman's smile. Then he pressed it back inside his wallet quickly, as if the memory was not for strangers. She looked away, heat rising in her chest. But the image had already imprinted on her. His loneliness carried in the same way she carried hers. An invisible mirror, showing her what it looked like from the outside. The clock above groaned forward another minute. Outside, clouds thickened, darkening the station's glass ceiling. A drop of rain slid down, then another, until the sky began to pour. Thunder rolled faintly, shaking the air, reminding her of nights she had counted coins by candlelight, trying to believe she could keep going. Her heart told her to stand, to board the next train, to run again. Her mind whispered of danger. Why did he keep watching her? Was it chance or design? The thought clawed at her chest, even as something else pulled her toward him. He shifted slightly, resting his hands on his knees. His fingers tapped once, then stilled, betraying nerves he didn't try to hide. He glanced at her suitcase, then back to her face. Their eyes locked. She should have turned away. She didn't. The rain battered harder against the glass roof, drowning the noise of the crowd until only silence seemed to exist between them. She thought of her father's words again. Not everything worth keeping comes easy. But was this worth keeping, or was it another weight that would break her? Her breath caught, suspended. Every instinct screamed to move, to choose, but she sat still, watching him as though the answer might come from his silence. Fate or manipulation? She couldn't tell, and that uncertainty was its own prison. The scarf slipped from her lap once more. This time, she didn't reach for it. The platform number changed again. A tide of people shifted, dragging their bags, muttering complaints. The girl rose with them, clutching the suitcase handle until her hand burned. She told herself this was it. Movement, escape, the final cut from everything that held her still. But her legs betrayed her. She stopped halfway down the corridor, breath shallow, the suitcase bumping against her shin. One last look. That's all she needed, just one. Her eyes found him. The stranger stood where she had left him, rainwater dripping from his shoulders where he had stepped too close to the open doors. In his hand, her scarf. She hadn't even noticed it fall when she stood. He held it carefully, not like a possession, but like a fragile thing entrusted to him. The sight stole her air. For years she had carried that scarf as a wound, an inheritance, a burden. But in his grasp, it looked different, lighter, almost like something worth saving. Her throat tightened. Her body begged her to walk forward, to take it back, to claim what was hers. But fear pinned her feet to the tile. A pair of elderly women passed behind her, their whispers sharp enough to slice. Poor girl, can't even leave properly. She's waiting for someone who's not coming. Their judgment hung heavy in the air, pressing on her shoulders until she almost broke beneath it. The stranger's eyes caught hers again. Slowly, he lifted the scarf, letting the red fabric sway gently between his fingers. No words, no gestures, Just an offering, silent and raw. She wanted to shout at him, to ask who he was, why he had been watching, what he wanted. But her voice fractured before it reached her lips. Instead, she mouthed nothing, and he answered with nothing. The train's horn wailed in the distance. The crowd surged toward the gates. She stood apart, trapped in that fragile space between staying and going. Her suitcase slipped from her grip, hitting the floor with a dull thud. The sound startled even her. She pressed her hand against her chest, willing her breath to steady, but her heart pounded against her palm like a trapped bird. Some people carry more than just bags. The thought rose in her mind like an echo not her own. They carry silence. They carry pieces of others too heavy to drop. Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. She turned as if to walk away, one step too, but her head snapped back for one last glance. The scarf was still in his hands. The train doors slid open, and the space between them grew unbearable. The scarf lingered between them, suspended like a thread binding two strangers who had no reason to be tethered. She finally stepped forward, though each movement felt like dragging her body through water. The crowd pressed past her, rushing to the train, but she moved the opposite way, toward him. When she reached him, he didn't hand the scarf back immediately. Instead, he looked at it, then at her, his voice low, edged with something unspoken. "This belonged to someone once," he said, his fingers brushing the frayed edge. "She used to hold it the way you do, like it carried more than fabric." Her breath caught. He extended it to her then, slowly. She took it, but the scarf felt heavier now, as if layered with two lives, not one. She almost asked the question, but his wallet slipped slightly again as he shifted, and the photograph slipped into view. Not just a boy and a woman, she saw it clearly now. A girl, younger than she was, wrapped in the same red scarf, eyes bright, smile wide. Her pulse thundered. The scarf wasn't just hers, it was his too. The station blurred around her, voices muffled under the sound of her heartbeat. His silence deepened, waited. She forced her lips to part. Who was she? He didn't answer at once. His gaze flicked to the clock above, the rain streaking the glass ceiling, the suitcase by her feet. Finally, he said, "My daughter. She never made it past the station." The words fell like glass shattering on stone. She staggered under them, clutching the scarf tighter, remembering her father's voice. "When the wind pulls, hold on tighter." But what if the wind belonged to someone else's grief? Her knees weakened. The scarf pressed against her face, as if to stifle her trembling. A part of her wanted to run, to escape this accidental inheritance of sorrow. Another part whispered that fate had cornered her here for a reason. "Not everything worth keeping comes easy," she murmured, hearing the phrase echo in a new, haunting way. His eyes widened faintly at the words, as if they belonged to him too. She knew then, there was no going back. The scarf was no longer just memory. It was a chain, a bond, a choice she could not unmake. The train roared in the background, doors slamming shut. The chance to leave slipped away. And when the stranger turned, walking toward a side corridor leading away from the platforms, she followed. One step, then another. Into a room she had never meant to enter, into a decision that would alter everything. The corridor swallowed them, dimmer than the station's wide, glass-lit expanse. Here, the walls hummed with echoes, the muffled thunder outside, the hiss of trains departing, the faint murmur of strangers too far away to matter. She followed him without knowing why, the scarf clenched in her fist, her suitcase abandoned behind her. He stopped beneath a flickering light. For a moment, he didn't turn. His shoulders rose and fell once, heavy with something that had lived too long inside him. Then he spoke. "You carry it the same way she did," he said softly, eyes still fixed on the ground. "Like you're afraid to let it go, because if you do, you'll vanish with it." Her lips trembled. "Maybe I am." Finally, he faced her. His eyes were not cruel, not kind, just unbearably human. "Do you know why I watched you?" She shook her head. "Because you reminded me of her. The way you sat, the way you held the scarf, even the way you almost left but couldn't." His gaze burned into hers. "For a moment, I thought, maybe I could keep you. Maybe I could rewrite what I lost." Her heart stuttered. The scarf tightened in her grip. She wanted to recoil, but the truth was sharper. Had she not been doing the same? Using the scarf to hold on to someone gone, to pretend memory was enough to survive. The silence broke with a single drop of water falling from the ceiling, echoing like a bell. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "I'm not her. I know." His answer was immediate, yet the grief in his eyes betrayed him. "But you are all I have left of her now." He reached forward, not to touch her, but to the scarf. His fingers brushed it, lingering as though it were flesh and not fabric. "Take it. Carry her with you." "I can't any more." The weight shifted then. What had once been her anchor became his release. Her chest tightened, but she did not let it fall. She accepted the burden willingly, knowing it was no longer hers alone. The announcement of another train rattled through the corridor. She imagined the platforms beyond, the laughter, the reunions, the departures. For the first time, she did not ache to be part of them. Rebirth did not come with escape, but with sacrifice. She had given up her chance to run, and instead, she had chosen to carry what he could not. They stood in silence, the scarf between them like a bridge and a grave. Then he stepped back, shoulders easing as though he had set down a weight that had been strangling him for years. He turned without goodbye. She did not follow. Her eyes lifted to the cracked clock at the far wall, its broken tick still dragging forward. Same place, same sound. But this time, she was not waiting, she was keeping. The scarf warmed against her chest, and for the first time it did not burn. Not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever. The station had emptied by the time she returned to the main hall. The floor glistened faintly where rainwater had been tracked in, the echoes of earlier chaos now replaced with the soft hum of cleaners and the distant call of a final train. Her suitcase still leaned against the bench where she'd left it. She picked it up with ease this time, no hesitation, as though the weight had lessened, not because the bag was lighter, but because she was no longer running from it. The scarf was folded over her arm, its red fabric calmer now, no longer a wound but a thread woven into her breath. She traced the frayed edges with her thumb, not in fear of losing it, but in quiet reverence for what it carried. She stepped outside into the rain-washed night. The streets glowed beneath lamplight, puddles scattering fragments of stars. For the first time in months, maybe years, she did not look over her shoulder. She simply walked, her head lifted, her pace steady, her silence no longer heavy. Her father's words returned to her, not as an ache this time, but as a gentle anchor. When the wind pulls, hold on tighter. Not everything worth keeping comes easy. She understood him now, not because she had held on, but because she had finally learned how to let go without losing everything. Later, in a quiet rented room, she placed the scarf inside a drawer. She didn't bury it, didn't hide it, only set it beneath the lamplight so it glowed softly, a relic but not a chain. It was his daughter's, it was hers, and now it was memory, something to carry, not to be crushed beneath. She lay down, listening to the muted hum of the city beyond the thin walls. For the first time, the silence felt like company. Her lips parted, whispering into the dimness. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition. The words lingered, half-breath, half-prayer, dissolving into the still air. She closed her eyes, not to escape, but to rest. In the morning, she would choose where to go, not because she had to flee, but because the path was finally hers. The scarf would stay behind for now, folded in light, a reminder that not every bond is meant to be lived out loud. Some survive, quietly, carried in gestures, in echoes, in the way two strangers can see themselves in each other and walk away altered. The rain slowed outside, leaving the night in fragile calm. She inhaled once, deeply letting it fill her, and as she drifted, a thought settled gently within her. Sometimes the people who never stay leave the deepest footprints.